Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, what sparked the deadly student protests in Bangladesh?
Literally, the whole city is paralyzed, it's very tense from the violence from several universities across the country.
Why students are losing faith in their country's promise of independence and democracy. I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take.
I'm Zulkarnain Saer. I'm an investigative journalist with Al Jazeera's investigative unit, and I originally come from Bangladesh.
So, Saer, welcome to The Take. It's good to have you. We are talking on Friday, July 19th, and you're in touch with people in Bangladesh as much as you can be, though the connections have been on and off.
Telecommunications were widely disrupted amid violent student protests against quotas for government jobs.
Looking at the pictures from Dhaka, the capital, there seem to be armored vehicles in the streets, clouds of tear gas, riot police. Can you tell me what you've been hearing from people who are there about what's happening?
I had the opportunity to talk to one of my ex-teachers, and he's nearly 70 years old. He said that in his life, he has not seen anything like this in Bangladesh before, since the War of Independence of 1971. So he's saying that we are living in a war-like situation. It's bullets are being fired, shots are being fired right and left. There is screams of people coming from the streets. There are armored vehicles, APCs, patrolling the streets. There are police helicopters circling. And then he even said that they're shooting at people from the helicopters. They're shooting rounds of tear gases.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So let's go back to Wednesday, July 17th. That's when Bangladesh started shutting down public university campuses indefinitely.
Right.
As a response to these protests. Talk to me about the protesters. Who are these students who are leading the demonstrations, and what are they calling for?
The students, their ask was a reformation of the quota system, which has been in place for a long, long time since our independence. And the quota system, it gives 30% government jobs to relatives and families of the freedom fighters who fought in the Liberation War of 1971. And their ask is, since it's been 53 years Bangladesh is liberated, families of freedom fighters have already grown up enough. So the jobs which are offered to the grandchildren or great-grandchildren of the freedom fighters, and they feel that this is not right because there are meritorious, talented students out there who are missing out. And also we have hundreds of thousands of graduates who doesn't have a proper job. So the students basically are demanding to abolish or reform this quota system, and they were doing it peacefully. But all hell broke loose when the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, commented something very derogatory during a press conference.
The way the Rajakars oppress this country. I was very saddened to hear yesterday that in Roykaya Hall, even students calling themselves Rajakars. Do they know what happened there on the 25th of March, 1971?
Now, Rajakar is a term which is considered offensive in Bangladesh because Rajakars are the people who collaborated with the Pakistani troops back in 1971. The night, university students, they all came to the streets, they demonstrated, and then following that day, things started to deteriorate. Students were killed by police bullets, and multiple were injured. And along with the police, there were The student wing of the ruling party, Chhatra League, they were in the streets with makeshift weapons like machetes, swords, this kind of stuff.
Wow. Okay, so the students are calling for the end of this quota system for government jobs because government jobs are highly coveted based on benefits and pay and stability. Sheikh Hasina, the prime minister, came out and asked if these jobs should be allocated to what's known as the collaborator. So she used this derogatory term to describe those who sided with Pakistan in 1971, correct?
Right. Yes.
So what do the students want the quota system to be replaced by?
They do not want the quota system. And if there is a quota system, they want a reform in the quota system. But what happened was in 2018, there was a similar student protest. And then the prime minister came out, she said, we're going to abolish the quota system. There won't be any quota system.
Hasina announced today that her government will abolish all quota privileges in the public service.
But after that, some of the families of freedom fighters approached the High Court of Bangladesh and turned down the instruction of the prime minister, which was pretty strange because in Bangladesh, you just don't turn down Sheikh Hasina's decision. So, and it was understood that she had some role in it because she controls the judiciary and everything in the country.
So what you're saying is that in 2018, these student protests, which were similar but not as big, they worked. They got the prime minister to agree that there should not be a quota system anymore.
Right.
But that changed when Bangladesh's high court nullified that decision.
Yeah.
I feel like an important point to mention is that she has a connection. Of course, her father was the founding father of Bangladesh.
Absolutely.
Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the leader of East Pakistan, declared the region an independent republic, which he said
he was seen as the man. He is considered the leader who was a torchbearer for our independence war. And people acknowledge that and people respect that. But she have overboarded it. And what you are seeing right now, it has all kind of collapsed because the students now they're demanding that the government must quit. Sheikh Hasina must step down.
Wow. It sounds like the youth in Bangladesh are disappointed by what their parents and grandparents' fight for independence has ultimately led to.
Yes, they are massively disappointed. And what happened is now they are being joined by the general people who have been oppressed all these years. And again, if you look back, there are 3 national elections. And as they have stuffed all organizations with their own people, all the elections happened under their administration. So the people had no opportunity to cast their votes in the election since last 14, 15 years.
Wow. So that is the background and the context for what we're seeing, Saer. And we know that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was just reelected in January. And these protests are clearly a challenge to her administration. So she spoke on Wednesday and promised that there would be a judicial panel to investigate the deaths in these protests. And she promised that those responsible would be brought to justice.
I further declare that there will be judicial investigation into all unintended incidents, including murders, with fairness and justice.
What do protesters make of that?
Well, during her rule, she has been in the helm of power. We have seen these things. We have seen one of the biggest catastrophes in the garments industry happen during her rule in 2013.
There has been another horrific incident at a garment factory in Bangladesh. An 8-story building collapsed today, killing at least 145 people and injuring hundreds of others.
There were fires where garments workers were charred to death inside their factories. And all these were owned by the government party people, or people who were close to the government. We have not seen any exemplary punishment. The corruption in the country have gone haywire, and there is no accountability, nothing. And what we are observing now, what is happening right now, is just an outburst of all these things. Like when your back is at the wall, you either give up or you push back. So I think now they're in the pushing back state.
After the break, what it's like to be a journalist reporting on these protests in Bangladesh. So, Saer, when you talk about corruption, it's because you have personal reporting experience on what you have found with the government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. You are an investigative journalist, and you've published reporting that revealed corruption at very high levels in Bangladesh's government. And you have faced retaliation for that, you and your family members. What are you hearing from journalists now who are there about the challenges and reporting on these protests?
The media landscape in Bangladesh is again one strange dynamics, I can tell you. Like, press freedom in the country is non-existent. It's like a military, it's like a dictatorial state. So even if you draw a cartoon, even if you criticize the prime minister or her family, you will end up in jail. So, journalists have been reporting, the people, still they're journalists. I have many journalist friends in Bangladesh who have been struggling to report. During this protest, there are hundreds of journalists are in the field, but they are also injured because, when the police are firing, when the police are beating people and government thugs are beating people, they are indiscriminate. They do not see who is a journalist, who is a student, or whatever. So one journalist have actually died yesterday while reporting from the field for a daily called Dhaka Times. He lost his life. A very good friend of mine, Muqtadir Rashid Romeo, who works for an outlet called Bangla Outlook, got shot at his hand. So people I know are getting injured. They're taking the hit. And sadly, we don't really have much safety for the journalists in Bangladesh. There are a few journalists like me who are abroad. So we have multiple sources in the military, in intelligence agencies, in various sectors, and they keep on feeding us the information. So the information which normally would not go to public in Bangladesh, we receive it and we have been releasing it. And I think sensing this, the government have totally blacked out the country because they doesn't want the world to know what is happening in Bangladesh right now.
Finally, Saer, thinking of the telecommunications blackout cutting Bangladesh off from the rest of the world, these deadly clashes between protesters and armed forces and police, and the deaths. Where do you think this protest movement and the crackdown and response from the government goes from here? What do you foresee happening next?
Since we're talking right now, I can tell you just recently, there was a prison breakout. During the protests, the protesters attacked the prison in the North Sindh district, and hundreds of prisoners have escaped from the prison. They set the prison to fire.
Wow.
They have set the state television station, they have set it to fire. They have set fire to multiple police stations. They have set fire to a ministry and various government party, ruling party offices across the country.
And these are protesters.
These are protesters and general people. And it is likely to be escalated from here. And cutting off Bangladesh from the rest of the world is a very foolish decision because, it is a country of 170 million people. It's a massive country. We have around 15 million Bangladeshis living abroad. All of them, they send remittances back to Bangladesh, their families. And remittance has significant impact on Bangladesh's economy. So what they are doing, what the government is doing now, they have kind of created a blockade from these expats to communicating with their family members who are living in Bangladesh. And how can you do this? It simply just doesn't make any sense, but it shows the brutality of the regime of Sheikh Hasina, the brutal mindset of Sheikh Hasina, that she won't leave any stone unturned to remain in the power. So far, nearly hundreds of people have lost their lives. And their demand now, as we hear, that the demand is for Sheikh Hasina to step down. If he doesn't step down, if he wants to continue like this, days ahead are going to be very bad for Bangladesh.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Amy Walters, Sarí el-Khalili, Khaled Soltan, and Sonia Bhagat, with Veronique Eshaya, Manahil Naveed, Mohammed, Zain, Shafi Khan, and me, Malika Bilal. It was edited by Noor Wazwaz. The Take production team is Amy Walters, Ashish Malhotra, Catherine Nouhan, Chloe K. Lee, Duha Mosaad, Khaled Soltan, Manahil Naveed, Marcos Bartolomé, Noor Wazwaz, Sarí el-Khalili, Sonia Bhagat, Tamara Khandaker, Mohammed, Zain, Shafi Khan, and Veronique Eshaya. I'm your host, Malika Bilal. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Joe Plord mixed this episode. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back tomorrow.